As Britain prepares to go to the polls, a closer look at the debates over security fears and failures amid a terror crackdown. The impact of overfishing on West Africa. We'll have a report. And could this gadget be Apple's secret weapon to beat Amazon and Google in the smart speaker game? Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent McCory. This is Africa 54. Now, security is now at the top of the agenda as British voters go to the polls Thursday in a general election. In the wake of the latest terror attack, British Prime Minister Theresa May says that Britain must drastically change its approach, pledging to crack down on online extremism. But May is being criticized for cutting police numbers and undermining security. Henry Ridgwell reports from London.
London is adapting to the threat. Soft targets are being strengthened. Barriers separate traffic lanes and sidewalks on bridges, offering protection from vehicle attacks. But beyond physical defences, how can Britain protect itself? That question is at the forefront as the country prepares to go to the polls.
I will look at giving more powers to the police and the security service, longer sentences for terrorist-related offences, dealing with this issue of the internet and ensuring there's no safe space online for terrorists.
The government is pressuring websites like YouTube to police content more rigorously. Community activists welcome the focus.
Because even as parents, we don't know what our children are doing, even if they're at home with us. And we would like the government to help us.
Critics say the roots of extremism stem from ideologies within Islam itself and must be confronted.
We believe that there is a lack of debate on this particular matter, and a lot of especially left-wing groups try avoiding speaking about this issue publicly, trying to as a means of being politically correct.
All three London Bridge attackers came from the Barking and Dagenham district of East London. Muslim leaders there strongly reject any link with their faith.
We, propagate peace and we preach peace. So what we expect from the people is peace and, tolerance in the community. So we have a system in place that, we follow the prevent strategy. That we will look after what's going on in our community, and we try to avoid as much as possible this kind of issues.
The government's prevent strategy works with communities to make it easier to report individuals voicing extremist views. One of the London Bridge attackers, Khurram Shahzad Butt, was twice reported to authorities. He was even featured in a documentary on jihadism and was a follower of jailed hate preacher Anjem Chowdhury. The government wants an inquiry into security failings. Opposition leaders blame government cuts.
What is obvious is that policing numbers, investment in that side of our security has fallen every year. Theresa May has had any responsibility for it.
The terror attacks have given Thursday's election an added urgent dimension. The immediate focus is on preventing further bloodshed. Longer term, the challenges are profound. Henry Ridgwell for VOA News, London.
Well, now to war-torn Syria. US-backed Syrian forces stormed into Islamic State's de facto capital of Raqqa on Tuesday, triggering intense fighting and signaling the start of what the US-led coalition says will ultimately be the end of the IS control in the besieged city. Commanders for the Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces say Tuesday's battle inside the city's limits, a first in the months-long battle, indicate the fight may be long and costly.
Raqqa is the capital of Daesh, or Islamic State, in Syria, so their preparations for the battle are extensive, whether through digging tunnels or planting mines or preparing explosive vehicles and suicide bombers. They have prepared well for this battle, both underground and on the ground. We will face these challenges as we are also well prepared.
Well, Raqqa was captured by Islamic State in January 2014 and has since become the base for the group's hierarchy. The fate of Raqqa post-IS has been the subject of intense speculation and tension among the various entities fighting in Syria. Turkey opposes the role of the SDF and its large contingent of Kurdish fighters that Turkish officials consider terrorists.
Sivilleri katleden, etnik temizlik yapan,
backing terrorist organizations that murder citizens, carry out ethnic cleansing and heap pressure on everyone who has different opinions, literally forces us to live on a time bomb whose safety pin has been removed. Those who justify terrorist organizations for the sake of their regional policies by depicting them as militia instead of taking a decisive stance will soon realize they made a vital mistake.
Well, there was no count of casualties, but the Kurdish commanders say they have heard that Islamic State is holding thousands of civilians as human shields. Well, as anticipation builds out for Thursday's congressional hearing with fired FBI Director James Comey, U.S. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson says President Donald Trump has asked him to push ahead with his efforts to rebuild the relationship between Washington and Moscow. VOA diplomatic correspondent Cindy Sain reports from the State Department.
Questions about the investigations into possible cooperation between the Trump campaign and Russia to interfere with the 2016 presidential election followed Secretary of State Tillerson all the way to New Zealand. Tillerson said the president has asked him to remain focused on rebuilding trust with Moscow, which he said is at a low point.
And the president's been clear to me, do not let what's happening over here in the political realm prevent you from the work you need to do on this relationship. And he's been quite clear with me to proceed at whatever pace and in the areas that I think we might make progress.
In Washington, State Department spokeswoman Heather Nauert said the fight against Islamic State is one area in which the U.S. and Russia can cooperate.
We are going to identify areas of mutual interest where we can work together, but it's important to note in areas where we do not see eye to eye with Russia, we will continue to stand up for our interests and our values and the values of our partners.
But the potentially explosive probes may make it difficult for Tillerson to make inroads with Russia.
I think he can try, but my guess is politically that's not going to be realistic. And to some extent, there is this cloud hanging over the administration on the question of relations with Russia. I would make the point that much of this is self-inflicted because the president, unfortunately, and the White House have handled these concerns in a way that suggests they're trying to hide something.
Pfeiffer said any real improvement in U.S.-Russian relations would require a major change in Moscow's Ukraine policy by Russian President Vladimir Putin. Cindy Sain, VOA News, the State Department.
Well, U.S. officials are accusing Iran of unhelpful interference in Syria and of stirring tensions elsewhere in the region. Iran also is implicated in Qatar's rift with its neighbors. The biggest powers of the Arab world cut ties with Doha on Monday, accusing it of supporting Islamist militants. Meanwhile, Iran has accused the U.S. of setting the scene for the escalation of Gulf diplomatic crisis during President Donald Trump's recent trip to Saudi Arabia. VOA's Laditza Hoke has more.
The day after Saudi Arabia, Egypt, the United Arab Emirates and others cut off diplomatic and economic ties with Qatar, residents of Doha found shortages of staple items in their stores.
I've come today and I'm feeling that there's a shortage of fresh chicken, which we eat quite often. So now I'm going for other options because of the shortage. Fresh milk is another thing that I'm feeling the shortage of.
A political analyst in Tehran condemned the isolation of the Qataris.
Blockading a sovereign country is a form of war. There are going to be people that are going to suffer from this decision. Iran looks for opportunities to improve relations with its neighbors. This may be an opportunity for Iran to have a better relation with the Qatari government, since they are blockaded from south, from east, from west. The only way out for them is north, and north is where Iran is.
Saudi Foreign Minister Adel bin Ahmed Al Jubeir on Tuesday defended the measure taken against Qatar for its ties to Iran.
We made it clear to everybody that Iran is a force for instability. Iran is a force for chaos. Iran is a force for death and destruction, that Iran's policies have fueled sectarianism in the Middle East, that Iran's desire to restore what they call the Persian Empire means dominating countries in the Middle East and expanding in the Middle East, and that those policies are not acceptable.
But an Iranian office worker blamed the rift in the Middle East on the United States.
I
think the U.S. plays a role behind the scenes. The U.S. is hatching a plot for all the countries in the region to create conflicts among them so that it can sell weapons.
With transport ties severed on all sides but the north, Qatar has to look to Iran and Iraq for travel across its borders. Iraqi Prime Minister Haider al-Abadi said Tuesday his country will not take sides in the disagreement. Zlatica Hoke, VOA News, Washington.
Well, President Trump on Tuesday jumped headfirst into the diplomatic spat between Qatar and major Arab nations. In a series of tweets, Trump praised the regional effort to isolate Qatar because of its perceived support for extremist groups. Now, the statements were notable since Qatar is a close ally of the United States. Here's VOA's Bill Gallo.
When Donald Trump met the Emir of Qatar late last month, he described the relationship as extremely good.
We are friends. We've been friends now for a long time indirectly.
It's the kind of language long used by the two allies, which is why many were surprised when Trump, in a Tuesday tweet, expressed support for several Arab nations isolating Qatar. Saudi Arabia and 3 other Arab countries this week cut diplomatic ties and all travel to and from Qatar over disagreements regarding its support for Iran and Islamist extremist groups. It was a sharp escalation of a long feud between Qatar and its neighbors, and there are big implications for the U.S. That's because Qatar hosts 11,000 U.S. military personnel at an airbase that's vital for the battle against Islamic State, says Andreas Krieg, who helps train Qatari armed forces.
This is a massive military base. It's the biggest forward base of the United States military in the Middle East. Most of the operations in Afghanistan, Iraq, Yemen, Syria are flown from there. It is critically important. The operations room is critically important.
Krieg, who spoke via Skype, questions whether the U.S. actually helped coordinate the plan to isolate Qatar, as Trump implied. There are also questions about whether Trump's own national security apparatus supports his tough language on Qatar, says longtime Pentagon advisor Anthony Cordesman, also via Skype.
It's not quite clear that this has, they always say, the endorsement of the Secretary of Defense, the Secretary of State, and the National Security Advisor. And I think we need to be a little patient.
A Pentagon spokesman recognized differing views among Arab allies, but said the U.S. was grateful for Qatar's long-standing support of the American military presence there. The State Department echoed those comments, noting Qatar has made progress on cracking down on the funding of extremist groups, but adding more progress is still needed. Bill Gallo, VOA News, Washington.
Well, I want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our show live on Facebook, so check us out and share our show with your friends also. And check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Find me on Twitter at VOA Vince McCory. Coming up, West Africa's fisheries pushed to the brink. A report from Senegal. Stay with us.
This is BizBeat.
In innovation, we know that 80 to 90% of all innovation projects, they fail.
Samuel West, a psychologist, is the curator of the Museum of Failure in Helsingborg, Sweden, a collection of items big companies failed to sell, like Colgate, the toothpaste brand trying to sell you frozen beef lasagna back in the 1980s. Remember Coke 2, New Coke, or Crystal Pepsi? Both failures and PR nightmares. Or recently, Google Glass.
They were banned from cafes in San Francisco, and people who used the Google Glass were called glass holes.
Then there's the smell nice idea for the Harley-Davidson biker.
It's the Harley-Davidson Eau de Toilette. They launched this cologne, and the fans hated it.
You can see all the flops for $11. West, who is the brainchild, says there's a lesson here for everyone.
I mean, when we try out a new skill or learn something, it's okay to fail.
For VOA's BizBeat, I'm Philip Alexio.
I'm Jeff Selden, and I work the National Security Beat. National Security Beat is anything that affects the national security of the United States, from counterterrorism to surveillance to even relations with Russia. It's one of the most fascinating beats you can have. It's probably one of the more important beats that you can cover because it touches on so many areas of the world, so many areas of people's day-to-day lives. I'm Jeff Selden, and my beat is national security.
Well, in Wednesday's business news, South Africa has slipped into its second recession in 10 years. Joining us from New York with more details is Africa 54 business correspondent Jill Malandrino. Hello, Jill.
Quarter. This follows just about a 0.3% fall in GDP in the final quarter last year. South Africa's economy is under pressure after President Jacob Zuma fired its respected finance minister, Pravin Gordhan, earlier this year. So political instability, high unemployment, and credit rating downgrades have really dented business and consumer confidence in South Africa, and the rand extended its losses against the dollar while government bonds also weakened.
Now let's shift gears a little bit from Africa to the United States, looking ahead in the next few weeks. What are some of the key events on the horizon that you can share with us?
It's going to be busy over the next couple weeks. U.S. equity markets have generally taken the dramatic news flow of 2017 in stride, but there are 3 events all taking place on Thursday, June 9th, that could potentially point the market in one direction or the other. These events include the UK election, scheduled testimony to Congress by former FBI Director James Comey, and a European Central Bank meeting. Of the 3, Comey's testimony has the potential to rattle U.S. markets the most, considering how stocks reacted so negatively on Wednesday, May 17th, when the New York Times reported that President Trump asked Comey to halt the investigation of former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn.
And also quite a number of events towards the end of the month of June, things that could move the markets in some way.
Yeah, I think we're going to see some volume. The FOMC interest rate decisions on June 14th, and we also have what's called quadruple options expiration on Friday, June 16th. That also includes the S&P and Russell rebalances. So what will happen is you'll certainly see a surge of volume at the close of trade that Friday. And of course, June 30th marks the end of the second quarter. In the absence of earnings, traders are mostly forced to focus on macro headlines until the season kicks off again in mid-July. And there's an old adage on Wall Street that says, don't short a sleepy market, so we have to see if that adage continues to hold up through June.
Well, Jill, thank you very much for your reporting.
Thank you.
That's Africa 54 business correspondent Jill Malandrino reporting live from New York. Now, at first sight, the fishing wharf in Joal, in Senegal, is teeming with boats, their nets full of wriggling fish. But look a bit closer, and you see an industry in crisis. The fish are small, and the local fishermen must venture further out to sea to fill their nets. The UN Food and Agriculture Organization says more than half of West Africa's fisheries are dangerously depleted. Rick Shrayuk has more from Joel, Senegal.
At first glance, it looks like a good haul, but these are mostly sardinella, known locally as yarboy, not the bigger, tastier fish that used to be abundant.
There are more yaoboy than mackerel.
Overfishing is draining the coast of West Africa, and Senegal is no exception. Local officials say foreign-owned industrial boats have depleted fish stocks and destroyed marine habitats. A local favorite, grouper, called chof in Senegal, is getting harder to find. Fishermen have to go out farther to find it. The added fuel costs cut into their earnings. Safsal is heading all the way to Bissau, 200 kilometers south, in search of the elusive chof.
The fish that we're looking for are found in the rocks.
There are no more rocks because they've all been destroyed by the industrial boats. And that's why we have to go to Guinea-Bissau, search for fish, and then return here.
Under-regulated fishing by locals has also contributed to the problem.
The government makes an effort, but it's very complicated. In the city of Saint Louis, for example, each neighborhood has a designated day it can fish. But in Joal, we don't do that yet. Every day, all the fishermen go to the sea. Sometimes, when a lot of them go, they bring back a lot of fish, and the price is not good.
The fishermen say they know they are saturating the market with cheap sardinella, but they say if they don't go out, they don't earn anything. The day's catch is taken to the local smokehouse, turned into fish meal for export abroad, and sold fresh at the market. Fish are the backbone of the town's economy. Business is tough even for vendors with the rare large fish. Scarcity has driven up the prices. The price of chof per kilogram has as much as doubled in the past 5 years, according to local officials.
If we had other work, it would be better. This isn't good for us.
The impact of overfishing is felt even further in households nationwide. Senegal's national dish is called chebujen, which literally translates to fish and rice. But for a good chebujen, you need a good fish like a dorade or a chof.
When someone says your husband is chofe, they are comparing him to chof. The chof is beautiful and has value. The chof is classy.
Tonight, the family makes do with sardinella for their Ramadan meal. The next morning, the fishermen once again return to the sea. Ricky Shryock for VOA News, Joal, Senegal.
Well, it's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54. Apple jumps into the smart speaker craze. We'll be right back.
If you've just joined us, I'm Mariama Diallo, and here is a quick recap of today's headlines. Getting online remains difficult in Ethiopia as the country enters the second week of its nationwide internet shutdown, even as the government falsely claimed the service had been restored. Tunisian authorities reported that 2 people have died in heavy floods, which also caused important damages in the Tunis area. Court in Niger handed an opposition leader a 3-month suspended sentence on Tuesday for advocating the overthrow of government. In South Africa, Cape Town kids get a fighting chance by practicing karate to help them learn self-defense and self-discipline. That's all for today. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Welcome back to Africa 54. Here's what's trending. High-tech trailblazer Apple unveiled the latest must-haves at their Worldwide Developer Conference in San Jose, California. Among the cool new stuff are updates to its iPad and Mac laptop lines, and upgraded operating software enabling augmented reality for iPhones and iPads. But the busiest gadget was the HomePod speaker. Powered by the Syria digital assistant, HomePod will take on Amazon Echo and Google Home, which have been building momentum in the market for voice-controlled speakers capable of controlling smart appliances, fetching content from the internet, and more. Next up, could this be the beginning of a new action movie trend? Wonder Woman raked in over $100 million during its opening weekend in North America theaters. making the Patty Jenkins-directed superhero film the biggest opening ever for a movie directed by a woman. Starring Gal Gadot as the Amazonian warrior Wonder Woman, is the rare female-led film in an overwhelmingly male superhero landscape. Warner Brothers Studios says 52% of the audience was female and 48% male. Well, and finally, has this year's hottest toy trend run its course? Here inside this three-story workshop in China, dozens of workers are assembling fidget spinner frames, boxing them up to ship to Europe and the United States. When the fidget spinner craze was at its peak, there were some 860 workshops in churning out the addictive spinning toy. Now, only about 10 are still producing the gadget. In the U.S., the mania for fidget spinners was unlike many other toy crazes. They were not made by a major company, timed for the Hollywood season, or promoted in TV commercials. Now, the image of a small-town America is often brighter than the reality. But as viewers Deepak Dopal tells us, one man in Mount Carroll, Illinois, is promising to stay put even as his town starts to fade.
It seems like a busy scene at Bald Guy's Coffee and Bistro. But the picture here and elsewhere in Mount Carroll is incomplete.
A lot of elderly people now are around, and you don't see many young kids. They're all gone. There's just not much here for them to do.
Roger Brasha has lived near this small Midwestern town since he was 9 years old. Back then, it seemed to offer the world.
There were clothing stores, there were shoe stores, there was coast-to-coast stores, there were hardware stores, there was barber shops, there was restaurants. It felt like he was walking downtown Chicago.
The shift away from small town and rural life has been a constant in U.S. history. From half of Americans living in small communities 100 years ago to just 20% today. In recent decades, as factories were automated or moved overseas, key markers of town's life have also left.
I feel real sad, yeah. Real sad that all the shops are gone and buildings are empty. You just don't, it just feels like it's a ghost town now.
The promise of small town revival is not always realistic, but it has a deep appeal.
Story here, I used to come in here when I was a young boy. My parents used to bring me in here to get my hair cut. And when you walk in the door, there'd be 10, 13 people sitting in the chair, all talking about businesses that happened during the day and waiting in line to get a haircut.
But not everyone is ready to abandon this way of life.
I like the small towns. Yeah, I'll be here until I'm gone.
Deepak Dobhal, VOA News, Mount Carroll, Illinois.
Well, and that's our show for today. And I'll be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. For more news, tune in to VOA's evening radio show, African News Tonight at 1800 UTC and in the mornings. Today, Break Africa between 0300 and 0600 UTC, Monday through Friday. Thanks a lot for watching from all of us in Washington. Have a good night.
Welcome to English in a Minute. A cannon used to be a common military weapon.
Loose cannon.
So, are Anna and Jonathan talking about an old battle?
Hey, I'm looking for someone to host a political event tomorrow night. Can your friend Sylvia help out?
Sylvia? She's a loose cannon. You never know what she's going to say. She could easily